Hi guys, this is Iki. I am the mod author of Iki's Enhanced NPCs on Nexus. Obviously this is Skyrim, and the reason I've made this video is that I have been asked about my kind of creative process when it comes to making NPCs. And this video is not going to show you how to convert one of these characters into an NPC. This is just regarding character creation. But making NPCs starts here. So whether or not you want to make your own NPCs at some point or another, or you want to just make a unique character for your own game, hopefully this video will help you achieve that. This is almost a straight Lexy's LOTD build. The only thing that differs are two things. Firstly, I installed Apache Hair for men just because I wanted more options for men. And then secondly, I installed this great mod called Expressive Facial Morphs. I think that's the name. I will link it in the in the video description so that you can see exactly what it is. But what that does is it adds a bunch of new sliders to the Racemenu that will really help kind of take your character up a notch and customize them even further beyond what the vanilla sliders could already do. Because the vanilla sliders in and of themselves are they're pretty limited. So one thing that doesn't work with that mod is a high poly head, but that's okay. Most people don't need a high poly head. You can always create a character without it and then convert it to high poly later, but that is a video for another day that I don't want to do. So I don't even think that you really need it, especially if you're using these extra sliders. So another kind of prerequisite to get out of the way and disclaimers is that your character is going to look a lot different based on a couple different things. The first thing is what ENB you're using. So this ENB, I forget what it is. I think it's called Halderson's. I don't remember. I'll link it in the description again in case you want to use it, but I haven't experimented with it beyond this screen. So it looks pretty good in this screen, but we'll see. Weathers can affect it somewhat, but mostly it's ENB. The skin that you choose to use will affect it hugely. So especially men, I've noticed. Like one of my replacers, I have a Lucian replacer, just looks terrible with one skin, but he looks great in another skin. So if you don't like the way that your characters are turning out, maybe try a different skin. This is Bijan skin, and it's fine if you want a very flawless young look, but as I'll show you in a couple minutes, if you want to go for like an older, like more mature look, I wouldn't recommend Bijan skin because they don't have great complexion morphs. So skin can have a lot to do with it. And then the third thing that can affect the way that your character looks is before you decide that you especially love or hate any of the colors on your character, go ahead, save your preset, and then go outside in the actual game and get some quote-unquote natural lighting, because the lighting in this alternate test cell is pretty bad. This is very basic direct lighting. You can see like some shadows, weirdness down here. That's just pretty typical for this. So again, before you quit your character in a rage, take her outside and see how she looks out there. I guess the last disclaimer is that this is my first video ever. I mean, technically I created one last night, but I forgot that my mic wasn't turned to the right option or something, so none of my voice recorded. So that was 2 hours of my life that I'll never get back. That's alright. It's a dress rehearsal. But being that it's my very first video, please kind of cut me some slack. Give me a little grace. I'm recording this during the day, which isn't ideal, but I'm hoping I'm getting it in early enough before A, my office gets too hot, and B, the neighbors' kids across the street don't start screaming yet, so, because it's pretty loud. So forgiveness for any background noise that you might hear. I'm going to try and reduce it in post, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so without further ado, here is my character creation process. So I think I'm going to start with a female, just because females, you can see kind of what the sliders do a little bit easier than what they do with males. I think my personal opinion is that creating a male takes a lot, it's a lot harder because, like I said, the sliders are a little bit more subtle, and it's just harder. So we'll do a female for now, and that way you can see what everything does kind of in real time. So, okay, so first off, obviously you choose, I guess the first thing is, I wouldn't ever mess with any of these in this all tab. I would go into the actual tabs in which they are nestled under to change them. That's just my opinion. I mean, technically they should connect with the sliders because they should be the same thing. But I wouldn't do this. It's too easy to make a mistake if you just, you know, scroll through the 50 billion sliders that are here. So let's change her. Let's make her Breton. Okay. So there's a couple different ways to approach character creation, at least from what I do. I will either reference a photo for someone. If I've got someone in mind, like a celebrity photo, I'll either reference that and like have it up on my other monitor, and that way I can, you know, look at the ratio of nose to eyes and things like that. So sometimes it's easier to build a character if you reference from a photo, but other times, especially if you're not trying to make somebody in particular, you just kind of go with what works and what you like as it comes up. And that's what I'm going to be doing now in this video. I'm not going to be referencing any sort of photo. I'm just going to kind of see what I like as I go. And once I find one aspect of their face that I like, then I will move forward. So if I like her nose the way that it is, then I'll change the eyes and the mouth around the nose. So that's how I kind of start character creation. Alrighty, sorry about that. Didn't realize my watch was set to ring. So now that that's muted, we can continue. Also, when you're doing this is a good example of this. Now I have the light off. Here's the light on. Just do this, especially when you're doing colors, to just try and see how they react in different lighting. So we're going to leave the light on for now. Skin tone, this is set pretty pale. This slider here is the saturation slider. This is where you actually choose the color tone. Second slider, saturation slider. Third slider is lightness to darkness, as you can see here. And then this slider is the transparency slider. So if this, I usually never mess with the transparency slider when it comes to skin tones. But I want to make her face, I want to give her a little bit more color, not pink. Usually some sort of a blend between red and yellow is good, depending on the race and of course how sunburned you want them to be. That's probably pretty good. Desaturate her just a little bit. That works. Okay, next up is the head. I tend to spend a lot of time in face. Head goes pretty quickly. And I am going to try and make this video somewhat short, hopefully shorter than the last one. So as I'm going through, I might skip over a couple different sliders and just give you a brief verbal explanation of what they do rather than showing you just for time's sake. So complexion slider is where you can see like what all the capabilities the skin you've chosen has. So this is just basic Bayesian skin, default flawless skin that of course everybody in Skyrim should have. This is cute little freckles, but then you can here's where you can see the limitations of Bayesian skin. Yikes, that doesn't look very good. And that looks even worse. So, and then you've got this last one, which is kind of a blend between the first and the second one. So we'll just go with this for now. But yeah, if you want to make an older, more mature looking character, I would pick a different skin. So now that we've got our skin down, you can choose obviously your dirt on your face. I don't ever like having dirt on the face unless I'm making somebody actually specific. Usually I'll put a scar in, here or there, but I'll definitely I put the scar in last. That's one of the very last things that I do. Same with war paint. Ear height, I think, is an underutilized slider. So I actually like to mess with this quite a bit. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of options when it comes to ears. I was making a male character last night, and I really wanted him to have like big old ears that stick out to the side, like so many older men actually tend to have. And you just can't do that in Skyrim. So if somebody wants to make that mod, that'd be great. But changing the ear height is something that you can do that can kind of make a difference. So I'm going to put her ears like really high up on her head. And I'm going to make them a little bit bigger with the ear size. And then I'm also going to give her a little bit of an elf tip because maybe she's a mixed race or hybrid. I don't know what the appropriate term would be. Ear shape, you can change this. You can give them kind of bigger lobes. Turn to the side. Make them a little bit, this is a little bit more sticky outy, sticks out from her head. And then you get into like straight up elf ears. Bat ears. Oof. Looks like Dobby the wood elf. We're not going to go that extreme. I think I just want to give her a subtle elf ear tip, which is here. But I want to see her, so I'm going to change her hair real quick. You might have to do this. Hair is usually the last thing that I do, but because it's covering up all the ears, and it might cover parts of your face, just try and find, yeah, I usually go with this when I'm doing faces. That way I can see all aspects of it. Alright, so back to the head, and we wanted to give her just a little bit of an elf ear tip. I'll do that, and then I'll make her ears smaller. Her ears are too big right now. Okay, yeah, that's cute. These, where you see face dash depth, any slider that has this dash in between these two words, these are the new sliders that are added by that expressive face gen morphs. So that way you can distinguish between what's a vanilla slider and what are these. I go through most of the vanilla sliders first, and then I'll go back through and do the custom sliders. Age, I don't usually mess with this. What age does is it just basically pulls all the features down. So here's what you can see with that. Ugh. Okay. So you can do it like maybe a little bit just to give them kind of a certain expression. But it, of course, the opposite way does it more, makes it more round. But I don't usually mess with this one very much. Forehead depth, this is another kind of vanilla Skyrim failing. I would really like to be able to create characters that have like a really rounded forehead, because we all know people that have a big old round forehead, but you can't really do that with the forehead depth. Basically what it does is it just kind of, it does bulge it out to a certain extent, but like if I wanted this, you can see how her hair clips up over here, and unless you want to spend a lot of time in the sculpt tab fixing that, it's just kind of hard to do. And I don't really want her eyebrows being bulged out quite that much, so I'm going to take this back down to 0. Oops. Head shape. basically this kind of gives you a couple different preset options for just changing your head shape. I never use the slider. Face part is if you want to change it between regular female, as you can see right here, female head Breton, or vampire, which okay, so the game just crashed, so restarting this. And the reason why it crashed is actually something that you should be aware of if you're using Lexy's LOTD mod list, because I think it's an error within one of the mods. The mod is the Ordinary Women. Because in previous playthroughs I've noticed this and I just keep forgetting to fix it. But we left off on this head shape here, and I said that you could go from normal head shape to no, not head shape. It was face part. Yeah, you could go from the normal face part, Skyrim female head Breton, to vampire. If you click over one more you'll see that there's should be a third option there. What that mod, the Ordinary Women, is doing, and I know it's Ordinary Women because I could tell from the prefix of the name of the file, is basically what they did is they made one of their characters as a playable preset, and it doesn't work. So the mesh crashes as soon as you select that. So I need to actually go in and try and fix that. But normally, face part, this is where you choose between regular, vampire, and if you have a high poly head, it's going to show up right here too. Okay. The other thing that I actually did forget to tell you is kind of about character creation, is that you don't ever have to obviously start with the default head. So one of the things that I do, especially if I'm not trying to make like a specific person in mind, is I will go through and just kind of cycle. Yeah, if you change your preset, you lose everything. But I will cycle through these presets and just try and find someone that looks like an interesting base to start from. So let's start with her, because she's already got a skin tone. I'm happy enough with that. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to give her a freckly complexion, and I'm going to take this dirt off her face because it's stupid. Okay, that's better. And I'm also going to take the war paint off. Even if I want to do war paint later, I don't want it right now. I don't want to mess it up right now. And then I'm going to go back into the hair like I showed you just a little bit ago, and make her hair nice and short so I can see all the features of her face. Okay, so back into the head. We did this ear thing, so I'm going to fix that real quick. The ears up higher, give her a little bit of an ear elf tip. I want to make her ears actually a little smaller than they are. Her tiny ears. Okay, that's good. Yeah, we left off on face part. Mouth part, this is where you would select a different teeth option if you had that. We don't obviously have that. Head up and head down, forward, back. I'm not sure why there's duplicate sliders here. Sometimes Racemenu just gets weird. But I tend to use head up and head down quite a bit when I do female characters. I will usually extend their neck just a little bit more, not quite one, because she looks like a giraffe now, but this is from 0. I'll put her head up just a little bit, so I give her a little bit longer of a neck. And then head forward and back. That is what moves the entire head and skull. Oops. Back and forth from the spine. So, I mean, if you wanted like make a Neanderthal looking person, you could probably do that. I don't tend to use this very often, if at all. Going back to this face depth, this moves the face back and forth from the skull itself, not from the spine. So check this out. So that's kind of an interesting feature. I haven't played with this a lot. Sure, let's leave it at that. And then face height is something that I will use occasionally too. So if you want to make her have a little bit of a smaller head or longer forehead, it does that without changing the rest of the ratios of her face. So if this is 0, excuse me, it's a sneeze. Yeah, I'll leave her like that. Okay, and that's it for the head slider. So we're going to move into the face slider. I tend to spend a lot of time in the face slider because there's just a lot that you can do with just the base of the face. So it does nose, it does cheeks, it does jaws. So a huge part of the face is encompassed by this face slider here. So first off, you pick your nose type, whichever nose type speaks to you. Again, if it's something that you're trying to emulate, trying to go for what most closely matches that base, or just something that you like the general look of. For this, I think I'm going to go with kind of your orc noses. Turn them to the side because this makes a huge difference too. Let's see, what does this look like? Okay, I'm going to use this nose as my base for now because I like how it's kind of rounded. It has this little rounded tip at the end, and I think I can do a little something more with this. Your base nose height, see how it's bottomed out here? You can raise this up. You will need to raise it up to a more human level. Already looks a lot better. Nose length, what this does is that this will actually stretch out the nose from the face right here, but it stretches the nostril too. It leaves the corner of the nostril where it's at, but it'll just stretch the very front of the nose. So you can see that. And it's fairly subtle. Doesn't look too bad. It's not stretching the textures too bad. Leave that about there. There's 1,000 different ways you can mess with the jawline. Just move the sliders and see what it does. Alright, that's good enough for now. Jaw height. This is the height of the mandible right here. So this is actually going to bring it down. It's already down quite a bit, or it's already up basically at the highest it can go. I want to bring it down to a more normal level. Yeah, that's better. And then jaw forward and jaw back. You can see she's a little underbit right now. I think this is probably going to, this changes where basically this area is in orientation on the face. It's not going to change her lip or her actual jaw back and forth. This just changes kind of where that mandible is. So I'm going to put this, it's just somewhere in the middle. Cheekbone height, pretty self-explanatory. You can bring this up, bring this down, pretty subtle. Let's leave it up for now because there's a lot more you can do with cheekbones. I don't do any colors right now. This preset already has some color in it, so I'm just going to leave that until later. I always do colors at the very last, after I'm done with everything else. So nose area depth, that's exactly what it says, and watch what this does. This will pull the entire front part of her face out a little bit further. So obviously that's not great. And then you can make her look like she got punched in the face, so probably don't do that either. But I am going to pull this out because I don't want her face to be quite as stubby as it is. I think that looks better. Cheek front and cheek back width. These are things I use quite a bit, at least I did before the new sliders came in. And this is going to add fullness to the face, both in the front right next to this lip area and in the back here. And you want to find a good balance between these so that when you turn her head or your character's head from all angles, it looks balanced and it doesn't look weird. So let me show you. The cheek front width, so here's what that does. This adds weight in the front, and basically they've got like these deep little dimples here, which you can kind of see. That just looks funny. That's too much. But if you balance it with the cheek back width, you can make it look a little bit more balanced and a little bit more even. Clearly this is not looking that great at the moment, and with this character, I'm not feeling a fuller face. This is not what I'm going for today. So I'm going to take her cheek front width down a little bit, and definitely rotate the head around so that you can see the angles here, and make sure that you're not, getting like this weird sunken look, unless that's, you're going for the Skeletor vibe. So I'm gonna pull this more forward to make her look a little bit more human. I think that's a pretty good balance. Cheekbone width, this does exactly what it says. Just kind of puffs out her cheekbones a little bit. This puffs out like kind of all of it, so it can make her look a little bit swollen. Your characters look a little bit swollen if you do too much of it. And there's, again, other sliders where you can kind of manipulate those. And cheekbone height does exactly, of course, what it says it does. So lower cheekbones versus higher cheekbones. I think I'm going to give her low cheekbones. And we'll probably refine that a little bit later. Face height, this is similar to what it was under the head slider, this face height here, but I would actually use this one in the head section. I think this works a lot better than the one here in the face section. This is the vanilla slider, but I'll mess with it just to show you. So you can really mess with the shape of their head. Yeah, I'm actually going to leave it like that. I kind of want her to have a small head but a big face. We're going for a weird look today. Okay, jaw depth. This is how far forward and backward her mandible is going to be. So you can stretch it really far back if you want her to have a nice big strong jaw, or pull it forward. A lot of elves you see have like no mandible, which I think is a little bit weird. So I'm going to pull this actually back a little bit because I want her to have this kind of striking jawline. And then jaw height, it's going to do what it says. Bring it up and then bring it down. You can give them kind of a jowly look if you're going for that using the slider. I'm going to, just leave that there. Jaw height 2. We just did that. Okay, the jaw width 2. You can mostly see this from the front. So pull it out, and it pulls it from this mandible section. It doesn't pull it from the front, it pulls it from the back. But I don't really want her to have a wide jaw. I think I want her to have strong but narrow. And I'm going to pull her head up so that I can kind of see how it balances under here. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, moving on. Where were we? Nose depth. Pulls her nose out a little bit more. Again, kind of punched in face look, although it's just for the nose. It doesn't quite encompass the cheekbones like the previous slider. But I want to give her a little bit longer. Yeah, that looks good. Nose tip slope I actually use a lot, especially if I'm trying to go for a certain look. You can do a lot more refining with the nose with these new sliders, as you'll see in a minute, but you can really kind of create a much different nose than you started out with this nose tip slope. So yeah, I'll leave that up for now. Actually, no, that's too much. I just want to pull it up just a tiny bit. Okay. Okay. Length, nose length too. This stretches the nose in a little bit of a different way. So this will pull the nostril forward, whereas the first nose length extended the very front of the nose, but left the nostril where it's at. So you can watch as this gets pulled way forward and looks unnatural, and then they'll basically flatten the nose if you do it too much the other way. I like the nose where it was at, but you want to keep in mind actually when you are doing this, try not to get the nostril in front of the lips, because that is when it starts looking weird and looking unnatural. Yeah, as you can see there, like that's way too far forward. Even if you want them to have a big nose, that's not the best slider to use for that, unless you're doing it in a combination with others. Let's put that back to 0 where I liked it. Okay, so your nose cilium, that's this area right here, basically the stop between her nose, where her nose ends and her forehead begins. And now that I'm grabbing her head and I'm looking at this, you can see this area right here, how this has this slope and then this bump. So the slope is where her brows begin, and then where her head starts right here. I don't like that slope. I think it's weird looking, even though I like her face being kind of short like this. I might kind of go back and fix this, but I'll do that. No, I'm going to do that right now because I don't like it. Where was this? It was face height. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to bring this back down a little bit. Oops. That's a little bit better. That's not quite as pronounced. Okay, like that. Okay, moving on. The nose cilium depth. You can best see how this looks if you turn your character to the side. So you can either break that out if you want them to have like a super Roman nose, or pull it in if you want them to have a little bit more pronounced of a stop. I liked, but the more you pull in this, it will change the bridge, the shape of the bridge of the nose. So just, oops, dang it. Fine. It will change the bridge, the shape of the bridge of the nose if you manipulate this too much. I like this little kind of arch that we have going on here. So I think I'm just going to probably pull in the cilium a little bit without trying to lose that bridge, the arch of the bridge. The height you can see when you're facing your character forward. That's going to move this entire area up or down. And you can always change their expression later. So if you do want to manipulate this, she doesn't have to look like angry or like incredibly concerned. You can change the expression in the eyebrows, and by actually going in the expression tab too. I don't want to make her cilium that high, but I do want it to make it higher than it was. So that's where it was. I'm going to pull it just a little higher. Okay. Yeah, that's good. A thing to keep in mind measurement-wise, just pay attention to this ratio here, where the nose cilium is in comparison to where the corner of the eye is. Most people, it's going to be right there. Your nose is going to stop basically where the corner of your eye begins. Here, you can see this is a more of an angle. We've got more of like a 10 o'clock angle happening right here. But that's fine because that's intentional. That's what I wanted to do. And then nose cilium width does what it says. You can either expand that or kind of pinch it a little bit. I'm not quite sure what I want to do with this yet. I think I'm going to pinch it. Yeah. Nose type 2, this is going to change your shape. I wouldn't mess with this. Nose height 2, I don't think I want to mess with her height right now. The height of the eyes and the nose and the mouth, this is something that you can always go back to and change, and you're probably going to want to do that to change those ratios throughout doing your character creation. And one thing that I should mention is that if you spend even half as much time as I do creating a character, you might want to go into your presets, even if you're not even close to being finished, and just save your preset, because that way if the game crashes or if you just go crazy with one feature and you mess up her face and you can't figure out how to get back to where you were, that way you can just kind of reload your preset. So I would suggest making presets into kind of different stages of your character creation. Okay, so going back to this, nose bridge width. So this is the bridge of the nose. This is everything between the cillian and the tip. And again, we're working with vanilla sliders, but you can see with this vanilla slider, it doesn't just change the width of the nose bridge here. It pulls out all of the skin around the side of the nose too. So you can see kind of when I'm tilting her head up, how this area of her entire face is kind of widened and pulled forward. So I don't particularly want that, so I'm going to keep this at 0 and probably use one of the new 2, that's fine, and then probably use one of the new sliders to more refine her nose. And then nose tip width, that pulls her nose tip as wide or as narrow as you want it to be. I'm going to leave that at 0 because again I'm going to refine this a little bit further in the new fun sliders, which we are here right now. Okay, cheek depth. Let's see what this does. So these new sliders are much more subtle. So you can look right here. This is where it's moving it. It's moving the cheeks up here that are kind of parallel to the nose, and it's either sticking those out further or pulling those in a little bit further. I don't think I want those to be stuck out quite as much, so I'm going to pull them in. Yeah. Cheek height, that again kind of just raises your cheeks up a little bit and then pulls them down. I like them up for this particular character. Okay, yeah, we'll leave that there. Shape is going to be kind of a measure of fullness. Yeah, so this makes the fullness right in this mid-cheek area. This is not very full, so you can see she's got, if you turn her to the side again, like look at this, this line right here. This slider kind of changes this line and makes it a little less pronounced. I'm going to leave it just kind of, I think, where it was. Yeah, I'm going to leave that where it was, or close to where it was. Okay. And then cheek width, that's going to pull it out to the side a little bit more. And this is a top, the top part of her face. I like it. Like for her, I'm going to pull this down a little bit to where that's at. Okay. Moving forward to the jaw, again, turn her head to the side for a lot of these because you'll be able to see it more. So this moves her mandible a little bit more. You've got a little bit more flexibility with her mandible. I'm going to pull that back a little bit. And height, I don't want the square look for her face right now, so I'm going to actually kind of raise this up a little bit because I think that's too much. So you see how pointy her freaking face is right here when you pull it down like that? That's really unnatural. That looks weird. So this is a function of both those, the face width and then the jaw height and the jaw width. So if you see this, you can know what to go back to and fix. So her height, jaw height, that's so that was fine. She's still a little bit pointy though. Let's see what if face weight is going to be an easy way to fix this. No. God, no. She looks like she got stung by a bee. Okay. Sometimes it's easier to use my arrows on the keyboard rather than my mouse. Let's go back in here. I think, was that the cheek? No, it wasn't that. Let's increase her cheek front width just a little bit. The cheek back width just a little bit. There, it's not quite such a super angular triangle. Yeah, that's a bit better, and I can kind of refine this in sculpt. Okay. We left off at jaw height. Jaw shape. Okay, so this messes with the fullness that's right here. Let's see what this does from the front. Okay, so this kind of gives her just some fullness to the lower part of her jaw, which I don't really want, so I'm going to leave that kind of pulled down. And then yet another jaw width slider. Let's pull her head down and let's see what this does. Okay, so this increases the width to the back of her jaw, and that actually kind of fixes that terrible triangle that I had. That's a little bit better. Okay. And it's too much. No, that's better. Okay. Into the nose. A lot more refinements with the nose, like I had mentioned. The nose bridge depth. This pulls it out, pulls it back in, so you can have a much different shape of the nose. I kind of wanted to just leave it where it was because I want to keep this little slope on her nose. This does a much better job than the vanilla slider of actually changing the width of the bridge of her nose, as opposed to just puffing up the whole sides of her nose like the vanilla slider did. So I think I want to keep this pretty broad. Depth, again, turn her face to the side, that way you can kind of see it. This pulls the nose out a little bit more. Yeah, I just leave it where it was. And then height. Totally different person. So there's a lot you can do with this. Bring her nose up a little higher. I think that's better. Okay, nose root. I'm assuming, I think that's the Celian right here. And yes, it is. So this is one that's best done from the side. And if you recall, I put that up pretty high on purpose. So this is where it was before, pretty high. I like how it looks even a little bit higher. Yeah. And then the width of the Celian, or the nose root in this case, make this a little bit more broad or a little bit more pinched. And the reason that one of the reasons I like these new sliders is that now I can make these angles independent of each other. So I can make the Celian width and the tip of the nose a completely different size than her bridge and vice versa. That way you don't have like these straight symmetrical lines on the face, because nobody's face is symmetrical. Everybody's nose looks different, and these lines are not always just going to be like a perfectly straight line and line up with each other. So okay, yeah, I like that size. I don't know if I'm going to change this, but let's see what it does. Oh, that just kind of increases the actual size. It doesn't pull it out. It just broadens it and just makes it a little bit bigger, which is a great feature. A little bit smaller. I'm going to keep it a little on the little smaller side. Okay, nose tip depth. The tip is fun to play with. That could be taken in some different directions. But I'm talking about the nose tip in Skyrim. This is super subtle. I don't know if you can see that moving. Best seen from the side. I want this actually kind of pulled out quite a bit. I like this exaggerated nose tip. And the height of the nose tip, this is similar to that nose tip slope slider that we looked at, but this kind of just gives you a little bit more refinement. I'm going to pull this up a little bit because I kind of like this little upward nose tip. And then the thickness, that's going to be like the little bulb on the end of her nose. Moves it kind of up or down. Again, you can see this better from the side. So if you want that more narrow, or if you want that thicker, I think I'm going to have it a little bit more narrow, like that. And then, of course, the width of the nose tip itself. And notice this is not moving her nostrils. This isn't messing with her nostrils at all. This is just messing with this one particular part of her nose, which is super cool. Okay. My hand is going numb, so I need to adjust my mouse. Where were we? Nose tip width. Skinny nose tip. Wide nose tip. Let's go with skinny. Feeling kind of this skinny but prominent nose thing. All right. Now just basic nose width. Pulls the nostrils out. Pulls the entire nose either in or out. I think that looks terrible, but some people like that. I liked it where it was. That's fine. Okay, so now we're into the nose wing, which is another fancy word, I suppose, for nostrils. And this is a super fun feature. So the nose wing height, this is going to bring the nostrils up towards her eyes a little bit, I think. At least that's what I'm guessing. Yes. So that brings up like the corners of her nostrils from this particular point. I think this is called the fulcrum, from the tip of her nose. So that can make a huge difference, as you can see right now. Or you can pull it down like that. I think here's where we were normally. Sure, yeah, let's leave that there. Thickness, I think this is going to pull it a little bit wider. Okay, this is nice. So every time I'm trying to make a character from a photo, I see this a lot. Like, I don't necessarily, some people have nostrils that are just kind of like flaps, for lack of a better word. They're not like these cute little rounded thing, and they're more kind of straight up and down, especially men. So this is a great slider for men to make their noses look a little bit more refined. With her, sure, let's leave it up like that. And this is going to be the width from, of course, the tip of her nose. No, that's too narrow. Let's bring it back out. Okay, that's good. Okay, almost done with the face tab. This is not going to be short video, sorry. Okay, cheek shape. Just kind of fills out her cheeks a little bit. You will be careful with this because this is what this does. This is not a very super refined slider. I don't usually use this shape, this slider very often just because it's kind of janky. So I'm going to take this back to 0. Elf ear. Well, we already kind of have an elf ear going on, but let's look and see if this kind of points the tip a little bit. It just brings it up. Okay. So donkey ears. Yeah, I like it the way that it was. Another jaw shape. I'm not going to mess with this. All these nose bridge. These are all vanilla sliders. The only thing that I am going to show you, I think, here, because these sliders are better than these vanilla sliders, is this nose tilt. This tilts the whole front part of the nose, either up or down. And I use this quite often. So yeah, you can see kind of just it can change the shape of the nose quite a bit. But I think that I liked it the way that it was. Yeah, it doesn't, you don't really notice it that much from the front, but from the side you notice it quite a bit. Okay. Yeah, and face weight, I showed you face weight earlier, but I'm pretty happy with this. Okay, moving on to the eyes. And yeah, I do just kind of go in order of the sliders as they appear here on these tabs. If I'm trying to emulate an actual person or reference from a photo, sometimes I will jump around. Like say, for example, I might do the nose first before I do the rest of the face, or the eyes first. Usually if the person that you're trying to emulate has a very distinctive feature, it's best to kind of start out with that particular feature and try to emulate that feature or duplicate that feature as closely as possible before moving on to the rest of the face. It kind of gives you like a base to go by. Okay, moving on. So eye shape, this is what it says. Find something that you like and then you can refine it from there. I don't really know what I'm going for with this, so I'm just going to see kind of what speaks to me. And some of them are higher or lower than others. Most of these latter ones are elf and kind of orc eyes, so I'm going to start from the very beginning. Weird eye shape. And you can change the height. So if you want this eye shape, you can change the height. You can bring these eyes up quite a bit. Let's see. There's just a lot of subtle differences. And these new sliders you can refine actually quite a bit more. I think I liked... These look exactly the same. One's just higher than the other. Let's go with this one. And I'm going to actually change these eyes quite a bit, but I like the base shape. And I don't have to mess with their height too much. Eye color, I'm just going to change this to something a little less distracting. It's fine. Okay, eye height. Again, this is a vanilla slider. mess with this too much, it doesn't look very good. So I don't remember where that was at. Yeah, some of these vanilla sliders you'll see, like if they're set at default, especially if you are working from a preset, the default looks really weird, or default meaning 0. So I'm going to have to bottom this out to make it look like where it was supposed to, or almost. Let's leave that there. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. Width. How far apart they are. Be careful when you're changing the eye width, because oftentimes if you change eye width and eye size, you're going to have to change where the irises sit on the eyeball for them to not look cross-eyed or wall-eyed, one or the other. That's fine for now. The eye depth, this is how far back they are in their sockets. Move them forward, move them backward. Most people have a greater eye depth than you think that they're going to. If you have like a high, wide stellium like I do, it doesn't look good to have their eyes like super far forward, unless that's kind of the look that you're going for. Usually this kind of looks better with a little bit flatter of a nose. So I'm going to fix this. Move that back to 0. I'm actually going to pull them back a little bit further, but I'm going to use a different slider for that. I'm going to leave these as is right now because I'm used to looking at them and I can always change them later. Elf eyes type, don't mess with this unless you're actually making an elf, and choose an elf shape up here. So iris spread, this is what I was talking about. So you can move them closer together, you can move them further apart. I almost always end up moving them just a little bit further apart than they are normally, because of they just kind of tend to go a little bit cross-eyed. I also tend to make my eyes on my characters a little on the big side, not like anime big, but bigger than perhaps what's realistic, because I like to be able to see them in gameplay a little bit better. I just think they look a little bit better in game if they're a little bit bigger. And iris size, this is something that changes, obviously the size of the iris, but you can look a lot more exotic, like maybe more elf-like or orc-like if you have big, huge irises like this. So she is, I'm making her kind of a part elf thing, so I'm going to actually give her irises, make them a little bit bigger than a normal human's iris would be. About like that. And then iris height. You may not use this slider that much anymore because there's so many more better ways to refine the eyes in the new sliders. But here you can pull it up or pull them down, make them look a little super weird. Yeah, too much skooma. Okay, back to 0. Eyelash length, self-explanatory. Eye depth 2. So again, pulling your eyeballs forward. E.T. phone. Alright. That's back too far. That's just too much distance between the corner of her eye and her nose stellium. That looks weird. And that's too shallow of a distance. So we're going to just pull this right back down to where it was because I think it was fine. Actually, no, let's leave it there. Okay, eyelid height. This basically kind of opens the eyes or closes the eyes. There's a better slider for this, but this is what this does. I believe this 0. And then eye spread. This is another way of saying like the width between the eyes. It's just a slightly different motion than the one before. This will actually constrict the nose. As you can see, it doesn't just move the eyeballs, it moves like actual features of her face. I don't like that, so I'm going to move that back down to where it was. eye size, I think her eye size is fine for right now. There's at least two different sliders that deal with eye size in a different way. So if you don't like the way that one is reacting, then just try and use the second one, because the second slider just resizes the eyes in a slightly different way. I use eye tilt quite a bit because Skyrim eyes I see are normally kind of by default tilted upward like a cat a lot, and I don't particularly like that. So, see, I mean, that's pretty standard, like maybe for a wood elf or something. But for humans often have much kind of flatter and sometimes even like sleepier eyes. That's looks terrible. So I'm going to tilt these down just a skosh. Let's see here. Basically, I'm kind of flattening them out, and then I'm going to refine them later. Eye type, that's going to be like another just total shape changer. So if you've already done a bunch of work to the eyes, don't click this slider. It's going to mess everything up. Eye height too, this is another different way of just dealing with this height of the eyes. I like this where this was. So, oops, pull this back down. Okay. So lower eyelid height and upper eyelid height, these do exactly what that says. This takes like the entire lower part of the eye and the entire upper part of the eye and moves them. And I used this quite a bit before I found these new sliders. So yeah, you can kind of open the eyes a little bit more like that, or close them a little bit more like that. So you can mess with the shape quite a bit using these sliders. Make them look a little bit more alert this way, and I might come back to these because I do want to change these shapes a little bit, but I'm going to go into these new sliders now. Okay, eyeball depth. Yeah, so you see here, it's fine, like the depth of her eyeballs is fine in comparison to where her nose stops and starts. This measurement right here, this is fine, this looks fine to me. What I don't like though is how when I pull her head to the side like this, there's not that much depth between the bottom of her eyelid and like where her cheek begins. And there should be more depth there, at least for this character, in my opinion. I want to create more depth there. So I'm going to hope that this slider will give me a little bit more depth. But what this does, this particular slider just deals with the eyeball in and of itself, which can be handy sometimes. But I want to leave this where it was. And I'm going to try and fix this depth issue. Ground, I think that's what this is. Go ahead to the side where I can see what I'm doing. No. Oh, right. Okay, so look up here at the very top of her eyes. This kind of just changes the shadowing. See? I don't know if I need to fix her eyes to that point, at least not in this video. Fix this depth. Eye depth is at 0. Let's pull this back a little bit. You can also fix this somewhat with their brows by making the brows a little bit more pronounced. That's a little bit better. That's getting a little wide. right here. And you can fix some of this stuff in Sculpt, like I'll show you. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that for now, because this video is already too long and it's going to continue to be too long. Okay, so I was in these new fun sliders. 1 second here. Drink of water. Okay. Okay, so we left off with eyeball depth. Eyeball height, so the height of the actual eyeballs within the sockets. I think this is better than using the iris raise or lowering. You can kind of change their expression a little bit this way, but don't forget you actually have an expression tab up here that is actually that is super useful. Her eyeballs, I think I'm going to pull them down a little bit. No. Alright, this is normal. This is where it was. I'm just going to pull them up just the slightest bit. And then size of her eyeballs. Basically this kind of like increases the size, but if you can go beyond the scope of the lids and see clipping like you see here. So just be careful of that. I think her eyeballs were a fine size. We'll just leave that the way it was. And then, of course, the width of her eyeballs. Again, if you're not careful, you'll clip right through where her skin stops and starts. Let's bring this down. That's fine. Okay. So we already looked at the eye ground. This is all that ambient occlusion. Yeah. See that shadow moving back and forth? I don't want to deal with this right now. It's too much detail even for me. Okay, now we're into the fun parts. Eyelid lower, eyelid upper, thickness. I'm just kind of astounded at how much more refining these new sliders give you in these. So here, look, you can kind of give her a little bit more of like the puffy, I'm tired, I don't get any sleep because, you know, vampires came after me look. So yeah, I kind of want to make those just a little bit more puffy like that. And then eyelid upper thickness. You can see I'm going to give her more of a, yeah, give her more eyelids up front. You can see it's hard right now because her brows are basically sitting on top of her eyelids. So that's something that you can fix to an extent in brows. You can either raise the brows, choose a different brow that sits a little bit lower, which I will actually do, and then raise the brows up a bit. Or you can do a combination of that and eye height. If you lower the eyes, the distance between the eyes and the brow bone right here, that'll sometimes give you a little bit more room. I'm going to wait to see if I can, well, actually, let's go into brows right now. Let's find a brow type that I like, something interesting. I like these big, thick brows. These are interesting. But you see how they sit, these stupid brows sit above this brow bone. Like they're at the very top of the brow bone. So that's why I'm glad that they have that upper eyelid height slider, because now I can actually see that she has eyelids. That being said, I still am going to see if I can raise them. That doesn't give me much more room in the eyelids. So I'm going to leave that kind of where it was. Depth. Okay. Brow depth, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but you can see what this does. Hers was a little too prominent. So I pulled it back and now she's looking better. This area, it reduced this area quite a bit. We'll come back to this. Let's go back to eyes. So I gave her more eyelids. Let's pull her eyes down a little bit. This all deals with eyelids themselves. And the eyeballs, I just want regular eye height. Let's use my arrows so that I can get a little bit more precise and pull this down just a skosh. That's a little bit better. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay. Okay. Ambient occlusion, this stands for AO, ambient occlusion. You can just see how much shadows you actually want or don't want. Again, this is a little bit more detail than I want to do. Oh, I had an eye height one right here. Okay. This is better. That's better. Okay, yeah, I like that. So you can mess with the inner corners of her eyes. Bring these kind of up or down a little bit. I'm going to bring the inner corners of her eyes down, I think. And then how much of like a refined little point you want them. I don't want them refined very much, if at all, so I'm going to leave those more open. And then how close you basically want it to the cilium, or how much further if you want kind of a stunted look like that. I'm going to bring them a little closer, I think. Oh, lower eyelid. So just the plain old height, bring the entire thing up and down. I'm going to bring the entire thing down just a skosh. And then change, actually I brought it down quite a bit, and then you can change the shape. That moves it back and forth. So you can see this a little bit better when you tilt her head down. So see what that does. I'm going to leave this out a little bit more like that. That looks a little bit better. Eye outer height. This is going to raise her lids a little bit. I don't think I'm going to want this, but let's see what it does. Yeah. So this pulls the corner of her eyes up, and I don't want to do that. If anything, I want to pull the corner of her eyes down. Okay, yeah. And then this is going to widen that corner of her eyes like that. Or narrow. I'm going to widen it a little bit. And then this is going to pull it back towards her ears. See? If you do this to this extreme, you should probably go back into these eyeball sliders and change the size of her eyeballs, because as of right now, it looks like you've got like this cavernous open area in between her basically face and her eyeball, which doesn't look very good. So I'm going to change this. I liked it where it was. Yeah, I liked it where it was. Another eye size slider. See, this is better. This is a better slider for size than the other one. The other one changed the actual shape of like her orbital bones, made those bigger and more pronounced too. This just changes the shape of her eyes within her skull. These eyes are a little too big for what I'm going for, but I'll take it up just a skosh. Okay, eye upper. So this is a better slider than the upper eyelid. That's fine. Just changes the shape a little bit, so you can see it pulls this out to the side to a certain extent. I don't want that. If anything, I like it more towards her nose. And this makes it a little bit wider. Actually, I do like that. That looks interesting. And of course, this will change the width of her actual iris. I'm going to make these a little bit bigger. No. That looks weird. I'm going to actually pull it down. That's fine. Okay, and eyelid open. This is a vanilla slider, and then eye size 2. Yet another eye size slider. Eyelid open basically does exactly what it says. It'll open up her eyes quite a bit. As you can see, but it looks a little unnatural the way they do this. So that's not something that I really want to mess with. An eye angle, this is the last thing that I tend to use actually quite a bit, is this will change exactly what it says. It'll change the angle of her eye. You can move them down or up just a little bit. And this combined with eye tilt can give you some kind of interesting results. So here's where we were at normally. And let's pull down just a little bit. I tend to kind of pull my character's eyes down just a slight bit. But I'm not sure if I really like that in her case, so I'm going to bring that back up. Let's see here. Now we're going to go up even a little bit more. Okay, that's good. Okay, moving on to the brows. I already picked the brows that I like. I kind of like where these sit already, but I'm going to move her brows down further. Skyrim does this weird thing where, like, by default, everybody's brows are like up here. And that's fine, like if you've got like a really surprised expression on your face, or of course if that's kind of like the character that you want to create. But I like less space in between the eyelid and the eyebrows. And I see this little line, this really subtle little line here. I can't get rid of that unless I want to pull the eyebrows up quite a bit. So I don't know. I don't really know how to fix that. Brow height 2. See, that makes that line way more pronounced. Yeah, let's leave that there. That's fine. That's good enough. The width pulls it out from basically this point. This point, the inner part of the eyebrows is anchored, while the outer part of the brows stretches. See that? So I kind of like this, especially with this brow type. This is a very big brow to begin with, so I like them a little bit more narrow. But one thing to keep in mind, though, is that a lot of these, they're not going to just change. The eyebrow itself is an overlay, so it's basically a texture on top of the head's mesh, which is basically the body shape, her orbital bones right here. So it doesn't really change the texture. It'll just kind of stretch it along with the mesh. So this width, if I bring this wider, it's going to change, it's going to pull her entire structure in and out. So something to just be aware of. That's too wide. I don't think that looks very good. I think that's fine. Forward, this of course changes her orbital bones a little bit. These are pretty far forward, so I'm going to pull these back. It really kind of will open up their face a little bit more depending on how prominent you make these brow bones. Let's see. Touch your face down. Bring that down a little bit. Sure. Okay, so brow arch. You can kind of make these brows a little thicker and change their shape if you don't really like a brow that is by default. So this is how you do that. I kind of like these with a little bit of an enhanced arch, and I'm going to change their individual heights a little bit in the expressions tab. Width is really kind of pronounced with their orbital bones, as you can see here. I think the width of her brows was fine as is. We'll leave that. Slope is just another way to kind of tilt them, so it'll either anchor point from the outside or from the inside. But it does change your selling depth when you do this, so I wouldn't mess with this a whole lot. I think I liked it where it was. Yeah, that's fine where it was. I already did brow height too. Again, new sliders here, the sliders with the dash. Let's see what this angle does. This is a little bit better way to angle the brows without changing the salient depth. It doesn't change it that much. So I actually quite like that. She doesn't look quite so bitchy. Yeah. Let's pull, maybe I can, yes, pull her eyebrows down a little bit more. Okay, that's good. Thickness, that does what it says. Make some thicker, make some thinner. Here was base. It's a little thicker. Sure. And then another more subtle slider for width. One thing to kind of keep in mind with the brow width is that this measurement right here, where the corner of the eye is as compared to where the eyebrow starts, you want to kind of keep this within a fairly narrow angle, or else you're going to get the unibrow look, or you're going to get kind of the opposite of what a unibrow is. You can, however, bring it well beyond the corner of their outside eye without looking too weird, because a lot of people have that, and I actually kind of like this, so I'm going to leave that there. I'm not going to mess with this. This is another angle. Okay, so now we're going into mouth. And I'm going to find something that speaks to me. Start from 0 because I'm weird like that. You can do a lot with the mouth with the new sliders. So just pick a base. Okay. These lips are a bit more poofy than I would normally do, but I'm going to see how I can manipulate them. I think the height of her mouth is fine right now. The distance between her nose and the distance between her chin are about equal, with the chin being like a little bit more. In this mouth tab, you change the chin quite a bit too. So, God, I really don't like this mouth. I'm going to change it. This is better. Okay. So this changed this distance. Changing this mouth type changed this distance between her nose and between her chin. It's about equidistant now. So if I wanted to keep this distance pretty long right here, the way that it is, I would want to balance this out with her chin unless I wanted her to have a tiny chin. Okay, so we're dealing with this base shape right here, and I think I'm going to make this a little less. That looks about right. Mouth forward. Her mouth is pretty far forward. I don't hate it, but I'm going to move it back just a skosh. Again, keep in mind the position of the nostrils to like where the lips are. So chin width. This is the front part of her chin right now. So let's see what this does. This just kind of makes her have like a little bit more of a heart-shaped face. So I am going to pull that down from where it was a little bit. She still looks pretty balanced. And then chin length. This slider right here, this vanilla slider, this pulls, if you move this, this pulls it down, this chin down. It doesn't pull it out this way. That's a different slider. It pulls it down. So watch what happens. I think that she needs a little bit more of a chin, so I make that a little bit better, a little bit bigger. That'll do for now. Not going to mess with color. Chin depth. Underbite versus overbite. I don't think I want to give her that much of an underbite. I kind of like this overbite look. Yeah, I like that. Chin length too. Maybe I can make this a little smaller. Yeah. That's better. Okay. Chin width too. That's just another way that you can kind of shrink this. Just a skosh, which I did and which I like. It gives her a little bit more of a rounded, defined chin. Lower lip height. That does what it says. Mouth depth. This moves the mouth back and forth in relation to the rest of her face. So you can make her have a little bit more of kind of a pursed lip look, or a monkey look, like an ape in this case. Or give her kind of like a weird Wicked Witch of the West vibe. So I think it's fine where it was. Maybe pull it back just a skosh. No, not that much. That's fine. Mouth corner depth, you can see this mostly when you go to the side, but this you can see as exaggerated. This pulls it forward quite a bit. So be careful when you're using this, but you can kind of make them have a little bit longer of a smile, go in a little bit deeper. Have these kind of dimples here if you do that. That's a little more extreme than I wanted. So let's leave it at that. Okay. And then mouth corner height, I mess with this too because this is a good way to kind of give them either a little bit of a smile or a little bit of a frown. But notice it doesn't change this part. It doesn't change the middle part of her lips at all. It just pulls the corners. So if you do it too, oops, where was that? That was at 90 something. That's good enough. So if you do it too much, it looks funky. I don't like that. Leave that where it was, 0. Lip height, this will change the height of both lips. It just kind of inflates them. Mouth height too, again, that's another way to deal with her mouth height, and I think it's fine the way it is. Width, mouth width. A lot of people don't change this. I think her mouth is pretty good, if not maybe like a little bit big, but definitely some presets, their mouth is way too wide. Like they have a guppy face, and I don't know why that is. Like their mouth is like that wide. Nobody's mouth is that wide. It looks weird. So yeah, pulled in her lips just a little bit. So this is where it was. No, oops. This is where it was normally, which I actually think is pretty good, but let's make it just a little smaller. Okay, yeah, I think that's good. See what this does for kicks. Fun. Okay, so chin angle height. This deals with this area right here. So you can either have kind of a defined, really well-defined skinny person's chin, or you could make them look a little bit more human with a little bit more weight on their bones and less like a supermodel if you change this. So there you go. You could just add a little bit more weight to it. For her, because I'm making her part elf, I'm only going to do this. Let's see. I'm only going to bring it down just a little bit because elves are super angular. Okay, upper lip height and lower lip height. You can see it just kind of puffs it up a little bit or brings it down quite a bit. So you actually have a lot of options, especially when you take the new sliders into consideration. Let's bring that down a little bit so our face isn't quite so voluptuous. And then chin jut depth. This is going to pull it out away from her face like that. It gives her just a little bit more of a rounded chin or a really weak chin. So I think it's fine where it was at. Okay, so now we're into the fun new sliders. This pulls her bottom, her chin forward and backward in a much more refined way. Like that versus like that. I actually like it a little bit more forward, I think. Okay. Am I making Charlize Theron? I think I'm making Charlize Theron. Height. It's fine. The shape will make it a little bit more rounded at the very tip. And just kind of rounds it in a little bit different way. Maybe we can see it better from the side. Not really. So I'm just going to leave it where it was. And the width. It broadens it at the tip. I don't really want it much broader than it was. Water break. Okay. Lip angle. This is much better than the vanilla slider. Yeah, let's angle her lips up a skosh. And this is going to change, pull her lips higher or lower on her face. That's fine. No, it needs to go up higher. There we go, where it was. Okay, so now we can start messing with the actual lips themselves. So you can make the lower lip much thicker or much thinner. I think I'm going to keep that where it is. But this is interesting, a width slider for the lower lip. So you can broaden it a little bit like that, which I like because I think that is interesting. You can do the same with the upper lip, thickness. So leave that there. And then the width of the upper lip in and of itself, I don't like that at all. And I don't like that at all. So let's pull that back to where it was. And then just lip width in general, I'm not going to mess with that. I don't particularly know what all these sliders do. There's a lot of oral and tooth sliders here that you can mess with on your own time. I will show you one aspect of teeth that is important in a little bit, but for right now I'm going to ignore these. The philtrum is this area right here, the space in between the 2 points of her upper lips. So her upper lip. So you can either narrow this or widen it. And I am actually going to narrow this, I think. I think it looks a little bit more interesting. I'm going to skip over the teeth. And these, the points of the lips, are the tubercles. So, tubercles. So we can either make these puffier, which I believe is probably depth. Yeah. So you can make her lower lip stick out more or go in a little bit more. I think I'm going to make it stick out a little bit more. Bring it up closer to the top of the mouth or down a little bit lower. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine, whatever. The width, so you can see it kind of just kind of constrains it in this part, or you can widen it quite a bit. That almost looks like she has got a fat lip, so I'm going to bring it down. That's good. The upper part is fun, so depth, whether it sticks out a little bit more or isn't quite as prominent. I think I'm going to keep it back a little bit further, like I have it. Height, that makes a big difference. Yeah, let's leave it up. This grabs this point and right in the middle, and either pulls it down or brings it up. So you can kind of get quite a unique lip this way too. And I can't decide what I want. Keep in mind when you're doing this stuff that you want these to be like a neutral expression, because you can change expression in the expression tab. Try to have this be like her normal face, and I think I'm going to leave it with her little teeth showing. I think it's kind of cute. And the width, let's change this. And then I may change my mind about the teeth showing. Move this. No, I like that, moving it farther apart. Okay. You see these two got moved farther apart. So now she kind of has this hourglass shape in between her nose and her lip, her upper lip right there. Okay, lips open, that does what it says. It just basically parts the lips right in half. You can use this. You can also do that in the context of changing her expression. Lip thickness, we've already done all that. I don't want to mess with lips anymore. This mouth smile, I'll show you this. Yeah, That looks pretty bad. It's not a great slider. Leave that alone. Mouth width too, again, just another area of width. Lip pout. Sometimes I use this. And this just kind of makes that area there, like the perimeters of her lips go in and out. But as you can see, like it does a really weird way of doing that. So I don't like that at all. So we're just going to leave that alone. And then the teeth backward and forward and the teeth down and up. This is something that you'll definitely, well, I don't know if you'll definitely use it, but you'll probably use it. And I use it a lot in NPCs because you actually see the NPCs talk. You don't see your own character talk, you see the NPCs talk, which means you see their mouth moves, which means you see their teeth inside their mouth. And a lot of their teeth are defaulted to set like really low or high, like either one way or the other. So you'll only see one set of teeth, either the bottom or the top. So the best way I found to kind of fix this before it starts is go into expressions, just do ah. Basically that just lowers her bottom jaw. There you go. And this is actually okay. It's not too bad the way that her teeth are sitting right now. And again, you might deal with more of this stuff on your own time. But for now, I'm just going to show you the teeth down and up and backward and forward. So you can move it up like that, or you can move it down like that. And you kind of want to go for a balance. Let's see here. This was 0. This is where it was. I'm going to move her bottom jaw up just a skosh. Yeah, I think that's fine. And then go back to the expressions and get rid of that horrible thing. Okay. Okay, yeah. Sometimes if you have their mouth open and you can see the bottom part of their front teeth too, that looks kind of good. So it's just a matter of taste with that. So now we're basically kind of finished with all of the important sliders. You can, of course, change your colors. The couple colors that I will, color sliders that I'm going to make special mention of, this is eye tint. This is one you can see. This changes basically her lower eyelid and can make her look a little bit more tired, like she's been up, you know, chasing vampires all night or something like that. This is also a slider, a color slider that you're going to want most likely to use with men too, because it gives the men's face quite a bit more character. I notice I didn't change the color. You can, of course, change this color if you are just going for a particular look, which I've done before, especially if you've got like an elf or a dark elf or something that has different skin tones. But for human skin tones, and at least the skin tone that she has now, I think this looks fine. The other slider that's worth mentioning right now is laugh lines. This is this area right around bordering her nose and her mouth. And this, if you give your character some color in here, it's going to give them a lot more kind of character. And this actually can change a lot depending on the skin that you're using too. So because of the shape of her face, this is only usually, it looks like this is only affecting her nostrils. But if I kind of bring this down, you can see and exaggerate this. You can kind of see how it will affect that entire part of their face. For now, I'm going to kind of just desaturate this a little bit. It just kind of helps with the shadows, gives their face a little bit more depth. And I use this for men quite often too. You can pick your own makeup. Hair usually takes me forever. I'm just going to pick a random one. That looks good, sure. But then again, she's got kind of a small forehead, so I'm not sure if that really looks the best. But here is something that I will show you. You see how this, well, this is clipping a little bit. This is a good example, a foray into the sculpt tab. And there's another video that I think Shiva did about using the sculpt tab that I would recommend watching, because I'm not going to go into this very much. But you can fix clipping in hair. A lot of times eyebrows will clip. You fix this in the sculpt tab. So you see every single element of her face has its own basically mesh cage. They call this a cage. And you can kind of see right here where there's gaps in this cage where that clipping starts and ends. So in the sculpt tab right over here, you see they're color coded as to what you're trying to mess with. And I can either do this one of two ways. I can either reduce the mass of her head, like make this, make her skull like a little bit smaller so that the hair will come through, or I can increase the mass of her hair. And that's what I want to do. I don't really want to mess with her skull. I want to mess with the thing that's supposed to be on top of her skull, not her skull itself. So I'm going to unclick this editability, toggle editability. I'm going to unclick this so that I'm not toggling that. And it looks like I need to go to this dark blue light year and mess with this. I'm going to toggle off the visibility of the cage on her head, because that'll help me look a little bit more. And you can also toggle off the visibility of the cage here, and that kind of helps you see the clipping a little bit more. Sometimes it's hard to see, but I see some right here. And so you're on smooth right now. Smooth is good if you're doing like a lot of actual manipulation of the mesh so that you don't have quite so sharp of edges. But for right now, we just want to inflate. We want to add more to this. So always keep the strength down quite a bit, because this a lot happens at once. Okay, so this is interesting. Just keep messing with it, because what this is doing, that didn't really help. Let's see. I'm going to turn on the mesh for this so that I can see what's going on. The problem with a lot of KS hairdos is that you've got this hairline, you've got another hairline, and then you've got the hair in and of itself. I think the problem is not with this blue hair, but it's going to be with the hairline underneath. So there we go. See that? I toggled on the visibility of this hairline and then that hairline. Okay. So what we need to do is fix this right here, because that's what we see. And you'll notice on this, you can click back through and undo what you just did. The reason that there's two different entries here is that you'll notice this pointer is does a mirror, so it does a mirror naturally. And I think Racemenu used to have an option where you could toggle on and off the mirror, but they don't have that anymore. So basically what you do is you have to just deal with the mirror, and then you click one back, and that will either delete the one on the right or the left, depending on which one you clicked. So let's give this a go. Let's inflate this. Am I editing this? No, I'm not. There we go. know why her chest is bouncing when I'm doing this. It's a fun feature. Okay, so we got that side. And now I just need to fix this. I'm not sure. There we go. See, that kind of made this jagged because I did this too much. Look, you can see this is going to stick out from her head at a weird angle. Or do I have, crap. I had this on edit too. Don't do this. Make sure you're editing the one that you actually want to edit. See, I'm going backwards. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so now that I have the right one edited, or toggled on, there we go. Boop, just like that. Alright, so that's the basics of how Sculpt works. You can do a lot more with Sculpt if you bring her head into, actually, Outfit Studio, Body Slide and Outfit Studio. You can mess with the mesh a lot more than you can in Racemenu, but that's a video for another day. But for right now, all I think I really want to do is give a little bit more definition right here, make her cheeks just a little bit more defined. And so one way to do this is you can go to deflate, again, make your strength down quite a bit, and make sure that you're doing editing the one that you actually want. In this case, it's going to be her face mesh, which is in red. And just make this a little smaller. And you see how the shadows changed a little bit right there? Bring this down just a skosh. There. But also you can see that's not very smooth. And so that's the danger of using Sculpt. And I guess it's not really danger, but that's the tricky part of Sculpt. You can get stuck in Sculpt for hours just trying to do this stuff. But the smooth will usually kind of help smooth out those little bumps that you created. I usually drag the radius up, make the smooth a little bit bigger, and I usually will put the cage on so that I can see what it's smoothing. That look better or worse? You know, that looked worse. Sometimes smooth makes it worse. Oh, because the strength was up quite a bit. Pull the strength down and just smooth out these edges just a little bit so that the shadows aren't quite as prominent. That's a little bit better. Alrighty. So that's a brief intro to Sculpt, and now we have our character. You don't want to load a preset, we want to save this preset now. Okay, so now we have our unique looking character. I hope this was helpful. Here is an example of another character that I did. So just know if you do change your preset, you're going to lose everything. So make sure to save all of your presets all the time. Save them all the time. If you change your race, everything's going to look weird. But I'm going to do it just to show you. So that actually just brought her back to default, but you can see like her head is still sculpted funny. So if you do this, change their race, go into Sculpt, and hopefully if you go to Clear Sculpt, yeah, that worked. So Clear Sculpt, and that got rid of the sculpt that we did on the other race. And so now I'm just going to load a preset that I did a while ago to show you another example. Okay, so this is another girl that I created yesterday. Looks totally different than the girl that I just created just now. So, alrighty, I think that's it, folks. Thanks for listening. Hope you find this helpful. And again, sorry for any background noise and for rambling. I don't know, my phone's ringing. Okay, bye.